Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James. And on my podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. All right, welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships in a young lady's life, and therefore our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. So thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to listen, like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on all of our social media pages and everywhere that you can listen to the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. And also make sure you guys are checking us out on our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Again, that's Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube, where you can find not only the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, but you also can find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as two other podcasts that we have on our channel. So make sure that you guys go there. Again, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. Make sure you guys go and check us out there. Also, make sure that you guys check us out. Check out our products that we have. Make sure you check out our descriptions. In our descriptions, we have a lot of important information as well as products. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products to purchase. So make sure you guys check in the descriptions for links to products and promotions that we have directly for you guys. But that being said, today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mr. James. How you doing, sir?
I am good, man. First of all, let me start off by saying thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. And so we're going to jump right into this thing. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Jason Jackson. 49 years old. blessed beyond blessed. And I have 5 kids. I have a beautiful wife. I have 2 daughters. One just turned 23 yesterday, and the other one is 21. She's going to be 22 next month. I have 3 boys, and they are 16, 7, and 26. So yeah, I'm really busy, but at the same time, like I tell everybody, I can't turn off being a father. That's one thing I can't turn off. I can get another job, but I cannot turn off being a dad. So that's why it's most important to me that I leave them with something more than just, I really leave them in a good space, because that's what it's all about, giving back.
All right. So we're gonna jump into this thing real quick. So you mentioned about your daughters. What are your daughters' names?
There's Brianna, and then there's Savannah.
Okay,
Now in the
Brianna.
book, yeah, it's Savannah and Brianna. And when I wrote in the book, their names are different just to kind of protect them and whatever. But at the same time, yeah, they're beautiful daughters. We've come a long way. I came into their life at 12 and 13, and we're gonna get into some of that. But I've always wanted daughters, but when I came into their life, I had a lot of learning to do. I thought it was easy, but by no means was it easy.
Yeah. So we're definitely gonna get into that, and we're gonna get into the book. But first, I'm gonna start off by asking you 2 questions that I start off asking every dad that I have on. And so the first question is, what does it mean to you personally to be a girl dad?
It means to me personally that I'm able to adapt to their world. I think a lot of time as men, we want things our way. We see things logically. They see things more emotionally. But at the same time, in order for us to have a bond, I have to kind of see things from their perspective. So really, I had to work on my empathy, because I didn't before then. It's like if you were going through something and I couldn't relate to it, I just couldn't relate. I couldn't say, well, let me put myself in Mr. James' shoes. I didn't have that capability at the time. But with my girls, it really forced me to develop that muscle, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. And so my second question, it sounded like you kind of already answered it, but I'll ask it anyway, and you could probably give it a little bit more clarity. My second question is, what is something that your daughters have taught you over the years?
patience, without a doubt, patience. Because with me seeing things from a logical point of view, and me having love for them and wanting the best for them, I was forced to have to be patient with them. When I wanted to snap, I couldn't snap. And it's like it was boiling up inside of me. Like when I named the book, for example, the name of the book is The Delirious, Delusional, Dedicated Dad. Well, delirious means pretty much crazy, and delusional means what I think is not actually what it is. So it was a lot of that, right? It was a lot of internal dialogue that I would have with myself, dealing with my girls. Now, and then my first marriage, and I'll talk about it a little bit. I never had to deal with those emotions. So then when the girls came along in my second marriage, I had to deal with those emotions. I was forced to deal with them, like, okay, well, I really, really care about their well-being. So I was forced to have to change and listen and not be so vocal about my own opinion. And, so it really helped me to grow. Really
Okay. All right. Cool. So generally, I like to start from the beginning, right? And I usually ask the dad, how did he find out he was going to be a dad, and that whole thing. But in your case, you came in into your daughter's lives when they were already teenagers, for the most part. So I switched the question up a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about even meeting your wife at the time. Of course, this before I guess she was your wife when you guys met. A little bit about your relationship with her, and then how that led into you, being instrumental in your daughter's lives. And we'll talk a little bit more about that transition as becoming a father figure after that. So tell us a little bit about your meeting your wife, and you guys' relationship, and then how were you actually introduced to your daughters, and how did that relationship go?
Yeah, well, when I met my wife, it was actually my son, my oldest son was 26. I mean, he's 26 now. At the time, he was in elementary school. So when I met my wife, I was just basically, I'm going there to pick up my son. She would be there to pick up her daughters. And we were basically in the pickup line. At the time, I didn't know her. I just seen her. I said, oh, wow, this is a beautiful woman. Just like any man would say, oh man, she looks nice or whatever. But I didn't think nothing of it because I was a single man, wasn't even really thinking about anything like that. I was just kind of living my life. And I finally struck up a conversation with her, and come to find out, we was just friends because she was in a relationship, and I definitely respected that. So, later on, I would see her all the time, almost every day, picking up our kids. I would just say hi, we would go our separate ways. And one day I went to have lunch with my son. So it was crazy because her daughter, I met her daughter before I met her. Her daughter was friends with my son, so they was on the playground or whatever. And this little girl come up to me and go, I'm like, okay, who is this little girl? You know what I'm saying? So long story short, come to find out that was her daughter. And we struck up a conversation probably 8-9 months later. And, she was still in a relationship, but she was going through some things, and we developed a friendship. So it was a long process. But that transition with the daughters, now I was excited, but they weren't as excited probably as I was because they didn't know who I was. One of the daughters knew me, didn't know my name, but she just knew of me. She knew me as being JJ's dad, which is my son's name. And it was really a bumpy patch, but I always respected what they had, beautiful children, beautiful lady. And we had to take our time. Like it was really with the girls. I was scared, to be quite honest, because girls are sensitive in that way. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to, first of all, I didn't want them to hate me or think that I was trying to take something from them, because it wasn't like that. But when me and their mom got closer after she went through the divorce, and I was already divorced, but after her and I got closer, we started to develop a bond, and I started to include the kids, and that was important for me because a lot of times it's like, okay, well, y'all ain't my kids, they got that type of attitude, but I never had that type of attitude. I was raised by my grandfather, and he embraced me, you know what I mean? And he didn't have any children. He was like my step grandfather, but he was my grandfather, and he took care of me, so I had that same mentality for them. So it was bumpy at first, but I learned to love them. And even when they didn't love me, Ernest, it was like, I didn't think they loved me, but they did, but they just didn't know how to show it. So I was still there, and I would still take those punches because I knew it wasn't about blood. It was about here are some children that need love. Not that they wasn't getting love from their dad or their mom, but they needed love. And that's all I thought about. How can I love these kids where they are? And it developed into a beautiful thing. So.
Yeah. And I want to touch on a couple of things that you said, right? Or a couple of thoughts, right? So myself, my daughter is my only biological child, right? She's 21 now. But I have 4 stepsons, right? And so I remember coming into their lives, early, like it's probably around the same age as your girls' role when you came into their lives, and definitely knowing, like you mentioned, like they don't know me. My sons did know me a little bit because our families were connected. You know what I'm saying? Like my mother was my oldest son's godmother. You know what I mean? And so like our families were connected, but I wasn't really around them that much, growing up until that time. So they didn't really know me either. So with me coming in to getting to know them, we have that space of who are you and why are you here almost. You know what I'm saying? And so one of the things that was important to me to instill in them was the fact that I wasn't here to replace their biological father. Like I'm here because I love your mom. I'm here to support you guys. I'm here to stand up in this space as a father figure, until he shows up, whenever that was, whenever he decided to show up. But it never was a thing that, you had to choose between me or him, And so in your experience, coming in the door, meeting your daughters, was that kind of a barrier too, or a conversation that you guys had to have where to some extent they may have felt like in the middle, like they had to choose dads? You know what I'm saying? Because I know that it can be a hurdle that a lot of us as stepdads that choose to step into that position do have to face.
Yeah, absolutely. When that transition was taking place, I remember sitting them down and letting them know, like, hey, it's not a comparison. I know you're probably looking at me, looking at your dad, looking at me, looking at your dad. So there was a lot of compare and contrast going on. But I explained to them that, no, when your dad comes to get you, go with him. Spend time with him. Because that's when I started to develop that empathy muscle that I was talking about. Because I had to put myself in his shoes. Because I had been in those shoes before, right? So, and when I was in those shoes, I know how I felt. Even though, the relationship was strained and stuff like that, but I know how I felt. So being the dad, being the father, and me and him had that conversation. I know how that feels. So no, you're going to respect them. You're not going to talk out of pocket to them. You know what I mean? You're going to try to develop that relationship. Now, once they go over there and they're with him or whatever, okay, that's on him. He has to do his due diligence with his children. I can't do anything about that. But I can prepare them mentally. I can prepare them mentally and how they should carry themselves. Because, Ernest, I had a lot of anger in me when I was coming up because my dad wasn't there. Even though I had my grandparents, loving home, I was taken care of. I was the youngest, they spoiled me. But at the same time, I was still angry. It wasn't until my late 30s when my brother passed away, my brother from my dad's side. Me and him he was a year under me. So when he passed away of a heart attack, it wasn't until then that forgiveness happened for me. And that right there caused me to start to heal and start. So I took that and then I gave that to my stepchildren, to my children. The love that I had to have to forgive him was the same love that I tried to teach them to forgive their dad for whatever he did, which I'm not saying he did anything, but in their mind, he didn't show up like he should have, right? Now, kids don't know adult affairs. They don't know how it works until now. Now they're starting to see how things work. But at the time, they was just like, here I am, you owe me, Dad. Like, no, I'm mad, So I had to teach them kind of like, no, you don't want to be like that. You don't want to have a chip on your shoulder about things that you don't understand right now,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know. And things was a little different for me, probably because, most of the time they didn't go with him. He was coming to us, right? For whatever reasons, his different living situations and things of that nature, it wasn't always safe for him to take them with him, you know. So a lot of times when he would visit, he would come to us, and we always had an open door policy, you know, like, hey, when you're here, we're here, you know. And even me having a similar conversation with my sons, you know, because they were at my house. I'm like, no, don't worry about me. Like when he comes here, this is your time to spend with him, you know. And some ways they would look at it like, well, why is it, you know, when he comes, you know, it's like you leave. And I said, because I don't want him to feel no type of way, number one, and then I want you guys to have 100% uninterrupted time with your dad, right? Because I was raised in a two-parent household. So I know what that bond is supposed to look like with father and son, you know, or, you know, just children in general, because I have 5 sisters too. So just so as a father and that bond with your children, you know, I know what that's supposed to look like. And I didn't want my presence, you know, to be a hindrance between them building the relationship that they needed to have, you know. So even if that meant, okay, you're here, you guys go play ball in the backyard or whatever, I'm gonna run to the store real quick, or whatever excuse that I use to just give them that space to be free, you know, in that space. So yeah, so my I think my situation was a little bit different. Um, and but I think it still was some comparisons, you know, between the two of us, because we are totally different, you know, as far as lifestyles and everything. Like we're on total opposites of the spectrum. But that being said, you know, even in that case of how you begin to, you know, groom that relationship with your daughters. One of the things that I told my sons and building my relationship with them was, you know, I need you to remember 2 things if you don't remember anything else. Remember that I love you, and remember that I have your best interest at heart. Because as me not being your biological father, I know there's going to be times, you know, especially being boys, you know, maybe a little different girls. I think they all come to this point at some time with that "you're not my daddy." At some point, they're gonna hit that. But I think boys hit it a little quicker and maybe a little often, you know, a little more
Yeah.
often than girls probably do, you know. But I had to tell my sons, like, I'm expecting this, you know, and I'm not even gonna hold it against you, because it's a natural, you know, it's a natural reaction sometimes as children, you know, to understand that, like, I know that you're not my biological child. But at the same time, no matter what we go through, if you remember that I love you, and you remember that I always got your best interest at heart, even as we go in our ups and downs, and, you know, times we don't like each other and whatever the situation is, if you can remember that at the end of the day, then we'll always be in a good space, you know. And so even in your experience of fostering your own relationship with your daughters, to, you know, be able to express yourself to them, as far as, you know, knowing that how much you care for them, and them being able to realize it, what were some of the conversations that you guys probably had, or even experiences where you were able to show up in a way that they was able to be like, you know what, this dude is, you know, here for the long haul?
Yeah. Wow. You know, as you're saying that, man, thinking back, there was a lot of tears on my end, right?
Mhm.
Talking to my wife at night, just telling her, just wanting to be accepted. You know, it's weird because, you know, being a father, you think, oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm this tough big dude, and you know, they're not gonna, you know, but it did hurt, you know, because, but I had to remember one thing is, like you told your boys, I had to remember love conquers all. So if I can
Mhm.
hold on to that love that I have for them, regardless of what I was getting back, right? You're giving out love and you're not really getting it back, or you feel like you're not getting it back, right?
Yeah.
You're getting it back, but you're getting it back in their own way, right? So my wife used to always tell me, like, babe, they love you, they love you. You know, they, when you're gone, they ask, you know, where's Jason at? Where is he at? You know, they love you, but I didn't always see that, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, just being transparent with them, telling them like, hey, y'all can say what you gonna say, but I'm gonna be here. You're not gonna push me away. You know what I mean? And when I said that, I remember the looks on their face, like, what? Yeah, you're not gonna push me away. because you know how kids can be sometimes. They can be very vindictive at times and be like, yeah, we're gonna do this. Yeah, this, this will tick him off if we do this, but I had to understand that they were just kids. I had the advantage because I had the experience, I had the time on my hands, and I've seen a lot more things. So my whole deal was to hold on to love as tight as I possibly could. And the more and more I held on to love, the softer and softer they became, and the more open that they became to my presence. So then it was like, okay, well, I want to go with you. Like, what? It's like, for example, the daughter that when you told me about, we talked before, and you told me about the daddy daughter dance that's coming up in June. When I told the oldest daughter that just turned 23, her face lit up. And to me, that was huge, Ernest. I mean, this is the daughter that gave me the hardest time, but her smile, and she just lit up. And now when she gets off the phone, she's constantly like, I love you, and she is not the type to say it all the time, but now she says it to me. And that just warms my heart because I know that she understands that I love her no matter what. So
yeah, and that takes me somewhere else too that I want to mention, because you mentioned a little earlier about knowing that they love you but not always hearing it, you know what I mean, and not always in that time period prior to when you probably needed to hear it the most, you probably didn't hear it, and I can vouch with that same sentiment. I remember, and I say this all the time, my son that gave me the most problems growing up, he's probably the one that says I love you the most now as an adult. You know what I'm saying? And I remember, you talked about, having those days that you cried. And I remember one particular day, we got into it real bad. My one son, he had a lot of anger issues, and so I always used to tell him it's not, the Bible says, it's not a sin to be angry, or it says, to be specific, it says be angry but sin not. So I should tell them all the time, I don't mind you being angry, you know what I'm saying, but it's what you do with that anger. So when you come here and start slamming doors and breaking things, well, now I got a problem with that. You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily the anger, but how you expressing it, you know what I'm saying? It ain't gonna fly. But I remember one specific time of us, kind of having that, head-on collision, should I say, but in the midst of it, what I, it got to a point where we were kind of arguing a little bit. It was kind of little tussles and a little physical, but it got to the point where it just kind of shifted, you know what I'm saying? And we're started really like having this heart-to-heart conversation, and we're both crying. And I'm telling him, I'm like, dude, I'm not here to hurt you. Like, I don't want anything but the best for you. You know what I'm saying? And so even though I'm challenging you to harness this anger and you feel like I'm coming against you, I'm really doing you a favor, because when you step outside of this house, ain't nobody going to have no, you know what I'm saying, no grace for you when you start acting out like that. You know what I'm saying? Right. Ain't nobody looking like tomorrow, oh, well, he must be going through. No, they gonna look like you as an angry black man, and you're gonna get that different type of response. I'm like, so I'm trying to help you harness that in a safe space, you know what I mean, before you walk out here in this world and just be misunderstood and something happened to you, you know what I'm saying, because of how you express your anger, But I remember just having that moment, and both of us in tears, you know what I'm saying, and just to have that moment. And I think that's a side that we don't often share with our children, especially our stepchildren, if you wanted to use that word. I know we don't necessarily use it, but that's not always a reaction that we share with them. But I think maybe it should be a time for us to really pour ourselves out and be vulnerable with them, especially since we're the step parent, right? Because I think as the biological parent, they already assume your love. You know what I mean? They already assume your intentions because you're my parent. But when you have the parent that steps in, it's not always recognize right away. So I think if we have those vulnerable moments to really, be vulnerable with our kids and be like, look, this is how I feel about you. Like, I really do love you and care about you. I think it'll kind of help that relationship, at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. You have to learn how to break down those walls. And the only thing that can break down those walls, in my opinion, is love. Like when they leave out of here and go, they're off at school and they're out in the streets or whatever, they don't get that type of love. Every type of love that they get is conditional, right? We come in as the step parent. I can be arguing with my wife and still turn to the kids and give them a hug, right? So that type of love is hard for them to understand because they're used to that conditional love. What have you done for me lately type of love?
Yeah.
So when we come in, they like, okay, what does he want from me? What's his motive? What's his MO? Oh, he just want my mama. No, I love your mother, but I also love you. So understanding that you don't get too many uh, too many kids that understand that. For one, in my hood, and my hood very well, and I didn't know yours. Look at how many displaced children there are.
Mm-hmm.
So if the dad don't want them, and the mom go through several men, or vice versa, the men go through several women, then the kid's like, what is love? So what, you gonna be nice to me for now, and then what, my mom gonna get into it, then I'm gonna be left looking silly because I done, so being vulnerable, being transparent is so important. And it's more manly to be transparent than it is not to. See, we got it twisted as men because we like, oh no, I'm tough. I ain't gonna, no man gonna see, I ain't gonna let the kids see me cry. No, it ain't about that. Because everybody got emotions. Either you deal with your emotions and you go out there and you hurt somebody and find yourself in prison, or you deal with your emotions, get them out, and let the people know that you care about, you love them, and then you deal with that. Because everybody has emotions. It's just how we deal with them. So teaching them that it's okay to say I love you. It's okay to hug. It's because I didn't grow up in a household where I told my siblings I love them. I was the youngest. I thought it was just something that, and this is a lot in the Black household. We just don't, it feels taboo to say that. You know what I mean? But now I'm able to say that because I feel like it's important to say it,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it's just the dynamics of different households. Again, with me coming from a 2-parent household, that was one of the things that my mom really instilled in us was the love for one another. And that's still something that we carry now as adults. Like I said, it's 9 of us, and we still tell each other we love each other all the time. But it's because that was how we was raised. In order to do that. And I remember even like when we would have fights, you got 9 kids, of course, somebody's scrapping just about every day, right?
Right.
But one of the things that my mom would do, sometimes she would break it up, and then sometimes she would let us fight, until we were done. And then she'd be like, you done? And we'd be like, yeah. And then she was like, now hug. And she would make us, you just got done fighting, and now you got to stand there and hug each other, until for whatever time period she said, and then if she really wanted to get on you, she'd be like, kiss him, you know what I mean? So she would make you either kiss him on the jaw, sometimes she'd be like, kiss him on the nose, whatever, so you had to hug each other and just stand there and hug each other, but those things built our relationships with each other, and we learned to love each other and respect each other, and so, of course, like you mentioned, there are some homes who our parents are not as intentional with saying I love you, or showing I love you to each other, and some are, just a difference. But I think that as parents, we do want to foster that relationship with us, with our kids as one, and then our kids with each other, especially in this time period that we are now, because there's so much going on, so many moving parts, and social media gets you attached to so many other people. You need to know who your core people are that really care for you. So I
Yeah.
think it's important for us to make sure that we're instilling in our kids how much we love them, but also how much they should love each other. So I think that's important.
Yeah.
Um, I want to ask you about your book, right? So you got the book that you've written. Tell us
Mhm.
a little bit about the book, first of all, because I know you right now you're in the process. Probably by the time this airs, the book itself, the physical copy, will be able to be in the hands of the listeners, and I definitely will make sure, if that's the case, that the website and all of that stuff is in the description, so that we can support you that way. But talk to us a little bit about the book that you've written, and why did you write it? What kind of prompted you to write it, and what do you hope that we as the listeners will get out of it?
For sure. For sure. Well, the book is nothing more than a guide to deal with, to have a blueprint of sort, uh, to help the father or mother navigate those teenage years. Those teenage years, in my opinion, and my experience, is the most crucial years. Why? Because there's so many moving parts. They're changing physically, they're changing mentally, they're changing spiritually, they're just changing all around. Plus, you got friends, and nowadays you got social media, you got all these different moving parts going on. So it's important that we're equipped as parents to be able to guide them through safely. So when they go into adulthood and they get into those relationships, that they have an understanding of who they are and where they came from and how they got there. You know, I learned everything. A lot of the stuff that I learned was from, I had a solid foundation. Don't get me wrong. My grandmother was a God-fearing woman. So I had a solid foundation, but a lot of the stuff I learned was from the streets. Okay. A lot of the stuff I learned about relationships, especially from the streets. So if we as dads know how to navigate that and put them in a position to win, discipline them how they should be disciplined, and love them when we should love them, listen to them, which is key, when we should listen to them, then they will be better off and they will thank us for that. And we can develop a relationship with them that'll last a lifetime. Because what I got tired of seeing was, what's the term they use now? Oh, yeah, she got daddy issues. She got daddy issues. I got tired of hearing that. Like, okay, what is daddy issues? I had daddy issues, I knew. But for a female, what did that look like? And my sister, she had daddy issues. Looking back on it, she was the firstborn. So she thought that my daddy owed her the world. And when she didn't get it, she let him know. You know what I mean? So it was more like that. And I was like, that's not a way to have a relationship. You know what I mean? That's not a way to, and you see it, and you see that same dynamic now with females a lot of times, what they can get, right? What can you do for me? Right? Oh, I ain't gonna have on nothing. You know what I mean? You see that, right? And you see it from both sides. So it's just not the females, but you see that. So if we have the tools, then we can guide our kids into the right direction. Because one thing for sure is they always going to need their father, and they always going to yearn for his love.
Yeah.
That's something that's going to always be. So that's what prompted me to put this stuff. Hold on one second. Put this stuff on paper, because I'm like, hey, somebody need to hear this. I went through this. I don't want my girls to go through this. And so I figured it was important for me to give me a second. Plug that in. Okay, so it was important for me to make sure that dads are equipped with some type of foundation. Do I know everything? Absolutely not. But I can tell my experience.
Right.
I can tell what God has put in me to do with my girls, because I feel like our relationship, we have a beautiful relationship now, and it's continuing to evolve. I don't look at them as my little girls anymore. I look at them as young women who are my daughters, and I respect them as such. They come to me with an issue, I listen. I don't always give my opinion. I used to. My wife used to be like, babe, just listen. I'm a woman. Just listen. And I couldn't help it. I had to fix it. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, you know, I talk about that in the book. Like a lot of times they don't want us to fix it. They just want to be heard. You know, so those are the type of things that I talk about in the books. So when you get into it, it's written like a workbook. I use a lot of bold font to emphasize this is what you want to. These are the things you want to look at. So right now I'm working on like a little workbook with questions for the dads or whoever, you know what I'm saying, that can write their stuff down like a journal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, I'll release that later on. But it's important that you're able to see it, you know, and have some tangible things you can do. For example, one of the questions is going to be, how many times have you called your daughter today? When was the last time you called your daughter? What did y'all talk about? Did you listen or did you give advice?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So stuff like that is important because they just want to be heard. They don't want us to fix it. We fixers. Hey, you got a problem? Okay, I'm this is what you need to do. So that's
yeah. And I'm laughing because again, my daughter's 21, and not too long ago we had that same conversation because she would always come. She was working at a job that I really wanted her to leave anyway because it just wasn't a good environment for her. But it was what she had at the time, and so she was there. But she would come home every day and she like, Dad, you know, and telling me about this job or whatever. And so every day she was telling me something. And so I would, of course, being dad, going to fixing mode. Well, this is what you do, whatever. And so probably after maybe a couple of days of this, I was talking to her. She like, Dad, everything don't have to turn into a lecture. You know what I'm saying? She's like, I just want to tell you what's going on. Like, I don't need you to tell me how to fix it. I'm like, all right. You know, but you know, we want to fix it. We like, all right, what they doing? Who said it? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
She's like, yeah, just listen. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to tell you, you know, what's on my mind, tell you how I'm feeling. I don't need you to fix it for me, you know. And even though sometimes, you know, some discussions warrant, you know, a lecture more or less, you know, from our standpoint of view, you know, there is sometimes a time for it. You know what I mean? A time and a place for it where it can be received, you know. And so we as parents and definitely as dads have to be able to get that balance of, okay, this is the time I listen only, or this is the time that I listen and try to give a couple suggestions to help them work through it. But I think the more we listen, the more we will hear the cues of what time it is. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this one of those conversations that I just need to listen, you know, or as we listen and like, okay, we can hear the little question marks maybe in the midst of the conversation, like, oh, okay, this is a time when she's actually want to hear, you know, some advice. And so we just have to listen more as dads, you know what I mean?
you know, man, it's crazy. If I had a dollar for every time I heard "Don't lecture, Dad, don't lecture," you know, and my wife, she says it a lot. She's like, "Babe, you lecturing," and I'm like, it's sometimes I just can't help it. But it's funny because it's as simple. What I've learned is as simple as when they're talking to us, it's as simple as saying, "Am I listening or am I giving advice? You tell me what you want." Because if I'm just listening, I'm here to listen to you, and you got my attention. If you want my opinion, I'll give you my opinion. So I started to do that, just asking that simple question. Because now that they're in their early 20s, man, Ernest, I'm telling you, it's hard now. What I'm adjusting to now is they both have boyfriends. They live with their boyfriends or whatever. So when they're crying and when they hurt, and I hear some of the stuff, and with me being a man, I just go into like lion mode. I go into lion mode and I'm trying to, and I have to just hold myself back. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, she's crying, she's hurt, she has to learn these things. I have to let the process do I have to let her learn. Because like my wife told me, like about a couple of weeks ago, she said, babe, the more you talk about him or the situation, the more she's going to cling to that situation. So you want to give her that space in order to see what you say, or see how you really feel come to fruition. Then she'll see it for herself. I said, you know what? That makes sense. I'm going to shut up. So but yeah.
And it's one of those lessons, you know what I mean? It's like, of course, with us being fathers is like, you want to protect them, but there are some parts that you for their own good, you can't protect them from it. You know what I mean? Because some things you can only learn as you live through it. And if we protect our kids from every little thing, then they'll never be able to handle the real trials of life. You know what I'm saying? When things come. So we definitely, it's a balance. It's a balance.
Yeah.
We're always learning, right? Like there's
always.
no instruction manual. There's a lot of resources and suggestions, but there's no manual that says this is the right way to do it. So you just got to kind of figure it out.
And that right there, Ernest, is what that was my mindset. Like, give the dad something.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you take 2 principles out of the whole 140 plus pages, you could take 2 principles and implement those principles. You'll be better off than having nothing in your toolbox at all. And that's how I looked at it. Like, okay, we need some type of guide, especially in our community, because it seems like the dads are not there. Even the dads that do come around, for example, I remember when I realized how Section 8 worked. And I won't get into political, but you know where I'm going. You know what I mean? And dad would come around and then he couldn't be seen. Right. You know what I mean? So he'd come around and he'll dip out. Well, that didn't make sense to me. Like, there's no relationship. You can't develop anything if you keep dipping out, coming in, dipping out, coming in, dipping out. So I was like, okay, if I can give the dads some of the stuff that I got in there, like, for example, there's a situation I have in there where a dad, I believe it was Marcus, where dad, he sets up time with his daughter, and every week that's their time. Now, he's really busy, but every week that's their time, and he don't miss that time. Well, she looks forward to that. You see what I'm saying? It could be a phone call, especially it could be a Zoom. Right. If she lives in another state, it could be like, okay, baby, hey, let's hop on. I got 15 minutes. This is our day. What's going on? That does so much, you know what I mean, for a kid and developing, and a young adult developing. So, what I try to do now is I'll take my daughters out, just, all right, let's go eat. Where are we going? We're going to eat. And I'll sit there with them and pay for their food. They'll sit there and talk, and I'll take them home, and it's all good. But that helps develop that relationship that you need as a father, so they can entrust you. See, they'll never come to you. What I learned, they'll never come to you if you don't allow them to just dump on you sometime. Yeah. Okay, I'll be your garbage can for the day. Just go ahead, throw it on me, because they need that.
So. Yeah, man. So we definitely going to make sure that we put the links and stuff to the book. Like I said, by the time that this episode comes out, all of that should be taken care of already. So we'll make sure that we put it in the links. But speaking of books, we're going to jump into the next segment of the podcast, which we call the Get Into the Core segment. And it's built off the ebook, The Core 4, which I've written, and it's the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. To my audience, you guys can get your copy of the Core 4 at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. And the book is The Core 4. So, Jason, when we're talking about the Core 4, so the Core 4 values that I believe that every daughter should get from her father is guidance, affirmations, love and affection, and protection. And so, of those four, which one part was the most important to you to instill in your daughters as they were coming up?
I would have to say, in the beginning, I tried to guide, and that didn't work in the beginning, right? Because I wasn't a daddy, right? But I would say love and affection, because, like I said, as I said before, love, you have to lead with love. So I said, if I lead with love, everything else will take care of itself, and it did. It took a while, but leading with love and affection, everything else started to fall into place. All the pieces started to fall slowly but surely because that love component was there. I didn't respond off my emotions, if that makes sense. Yeah. When they hurt me, I didn't hold it to them. I just talked to my wife about it and kind of just internalized it. But I still had to love them at the end of the day. So that took care of everything. So I would say love and affection.
Okay, cool. Last question. The ebook is called The Core 4, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. But if you could add a 5th value, what would that value be and why?
Oh, man. That's a good question, Ernest. I would say patience. The reason I say patience is because if I can provide that for her, okay, when she get in a relationship with a man, she's going to need that patience. She's going to need that because we could be knuckleheads at times, right? Yeah. And she, you know what I'm saying? She's going to need to be patient. So if I can teach her patience, then when he start acting up, then hopefully she can be patient with him and build something as beautiful. Instead of jumping ship, going from man to man to man, no, she going to be patient and wait this thing out and work on your relationship because we know it's work. So yeah, I would say patience. Yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. So Jason, I want to say thank you, man, for being on. Thank you for coming on, sharing your expertise, sharing your story. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, motivation, however you feel, and definitely let us know where we can follow you at your social media handles and things of that nature so that we can support you. And definitely I'll get the information about the book once it, fully comes out and is available. I'll get that information from you at a later date. But I want you to have the last word. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys check me out at my at my website, on my website, which is the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, it's dealhealfulfill.org because my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So make sure you guys are checking us out there. And also you can see where you can book me to come out to be a speaker or a workshop facilitator at your school or organization. Again, that's at dealhealfulfill.org. Also, we talked about the Core 4 ebook. There also are other ebooks that I have written. All of them can be found at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com, where you can find all of our ebooks, including the Core 4 and an ebook called From Males to Men. And right now, I'm giving away absolutely free my ebook entitled Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self-Forgiveness. That ebook is absolutely free right now. So when you go to ebooksbyejames.com, you could grab your free copy of the Forgiving Me ebook. But do me a favor while you're there, when you grab your free copy, grab one or two of the other ebooks as well. And I really appreciate that support. Again, that's at ebooksbyejames.com. Also, you guys can go to Deal to Heal Tees to check out our inspirational t-shirt line, which also includes our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. There's also one with the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast logo, as well as our other inspirational t-shirts that we have available at dealtohealtees.com. That's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Again, that's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. And last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month. And they're absolutely free, where we deal with everything surrounding around forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world. What does it mean to forgive? Just having a real deep dive conversation on forgiveness, which I believe is a very important conversation that we need to have in this day and time. Again, those workshops are virtual. You can take it on your phone. You can take it on your laptop. And they're absolutely free, but the information is priceless. You can go to forgivenessmission.com in order to register for our next forgiveness workshop that is coming up. Or you can go to Eventbrite and search for a forgiveness workshop sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. Again, these are bi-monthly. So whenever you listen to this podcast, either one just ended or one is coming up. So again, you can register for our free virtual workshops at forgivenessmission.com. All right. So again, Jason, let me just say again, thank you so very much for being on, for sharing your story. I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. James, for having me and being a part of your world and your community. I really, really appreciate it. One thing I want to leave with the dads or moms: be intentional about everything that you build with your daughter. Be intentional. If you're going to pick her up at 8, pick her up at 8. If you can't pick her up at 8 and something happened, at least communicate. Be intentional about building that relationship, and everything will work out. Everything will work out. So I would say that's my last word, because that has been something that has been very, very beneficial to me. Just being intentional. Be intentional about listening, being intentional about whatever it is, because they need that. They need that from us.
All right. All right. Where can we follow you at?
I am on Facebook, and I will be on YouTube. Oh, I'm already on YouTube. I just haven't recorded anything. But I would definitely get all that information to you. I'm on Instagram as well. And I'll get that information out to you within the next few days. So if anybody wants to follow me, befriend me, chop it up with me, we can definitely do that. And I look forward to that. As far as the book goes, I had told Mr. Ernest earlier, I am making a commitment to his followers to give my books out, at least the PDF form, for free. Why? Because it's all about giving back. It's all about giving people tools that they can use. If there's one thing that you can use, I've done my job. So it's all about giving back and showing the love. And I'm looking forward to doing a lot of great things with you, Mr. James. And you'll see a lot more of me with Mr. James. So I'm looking forward to it. So I appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We definitely gonna be connecting more often. Hopefully some live events, or should I say in-person events, because we're definitely alive. So in-person events, and definitely some more podcast recordings, and as you grow your platform, I definitely want to make sure that I'm showing my support and being instrumental in that as well. But we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where our mission is to promote the voices of girl dads to the world in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. And I think we're doing just that. So until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.